since joining Keller, I've been having great conversations about how we are all running our businesses.
Yep.
And for the last 6, 7, 8 years, I've been working in the business and feeling like it was a job. And the conversations I've had have really motivated me to get the bigger picture of the reality that we are running our businesses, and obviously financial is a huge part of it. So I'm excited to hear about all of it, where how can we maximize it? Because I've been making excuses as to why I'm not paying my quarterly taxes, because I still haven't. Never have in my whole career. I've been using that money, arguing with myself that, maybe it's beneficial because maybe I'm making more off of it than I would have if I spent it and could use it then. But just a bigger picture of the financials are a big part of the business. We're running our own businesses here, so how do we do that?
Love it. How many of you have heard this, run your business like a business concept? But then, yeah, like all of us, and yet, have you also had the second thought, which I've had, which is, okay, what is that? What is that? Like, that's a slogan, but what does it actually mean and what do you actually do? So I appreciate you bringing that up. And I'll give you one quick perspective and then we'll dive in on that. I think the most succinct way to describe what you're talking about is, as a business owner, you want to have your financial life organized enough that you have a predictive outlook of 6 to 12 months. If the past is organized enough that you can actually predict, with some degree of certainty, where things are likely to show up for you financially 6 to 12 months ahead, right? And you've accommodated for the likely outcome associated with that. So we'll get into how to do that. All right, great. Well, let's dive in a little bit here. You got a little bit about my background. I like to start with putting this picture up here. And this is courtesy of my sister. So she took my class and she said, Jesus, you got to put up a picture of your family early on because it's starting to sound, like, you're not a real person. So, so I was like, oh, that's weird. All right, so anyway, there's my family. And you'll see right there in the center, there's my husband, Christian, and those are not our kids. It kind of looks like it, right? Yeah, we borrow them from time to time. We find our kids when advantageous. But most they're my niece and nephew from my sister. My family mostly is in Iowa and Wyoming. I have 3 sisters, and I've got it's a niece and nephew there, and I've got another niece and nephew not pictured. Well, actually, my nephew there at the bottom right. He's a little older now. AJ, cuties. Anyway, our big why, what we do is we travel. So the big thing that my husband and I love to do is 3 times a year we take amazing trips. So he's an entrepreneur as well, and so we work a lot. And we come together 3 times a year and we go 12, 14 days somewhere abroad. Have a great trip. We're headed, our next trip in November is Dubai and Maldives. Super excited about that. Anybody been to either of those places? So no tips today? Okay, I'll let you know. So you can follow me on social media and you'll see all our photos. So we love to do that. And we plan, I book and pay for and block out 3 in advance. So that was something I learned early on, which is it's aspirational to say I can take these trips, but unless I blocked it in my calendar and I chose the destination and I paid for it 3 in advance, then it sort of didn't happen with a lot of consistency. So the next 2, so we're going to do Singapore, the Philippines, and Japan in March, and then we're going to take my parents to Ireland in August. So that's our next 3. So that's why I do a lot of what I do, so that we can travel and travel well. You can follow me on different social media platforms. All right, so to go into a little bit more detail on my story, which I touched on briefly. So I started in 2001, and I started with the orientation I just needed to sell a bunch of houses, and I didn't have a network, and so I thought, well, where are these people that own houses, and how do I access them? And I said, well, they're probably in them. And that was a little bit of my calculation. It's like, well, they're in them. They're in them, I think, right? So I built my first couple years in the business on door knocking. I gridded out the neighborhood around my office, and I literally just started knocking on doors. Because previous to real estate, I was in an information technology staffing sales position, where I learned a lot about the numbers of sales and how a certain number of contacts leads to a certain number of agreements leads to, right? And so I thought, well, how many people do I need to talk to in order to get listings? I had no idea, so I just started knocking on doors. It was like about 120 or so. And I remember that first one I got, like after 120 some odd doors, somebody was like, yeah, why don't you come on in? And I was like, what? So I came on in and I just kind of faked it and took some notes. I didn't have a listing agreement with me, I didn't have any of that stuff, right? So I just took some notes and pretended like I knew what I was doing and ran back to the office broker and was like, I think I know what I am. He's like, do you have a listing agreement? I was like, no. That was my first deal. And then I was like, oh, this is great. So 120-ish, and I can get a listing. So I started knocking on doors again, and the next time it was like 200 doors before I got one. It's like, whoa, so it's not 120 to 1, it's like 200 to 1. Like, what is it? And I just kept doing it, and I realized over time it was about 100 to 1. And I just built the business that first year on door knocking and doing open houses for agents who didn't want to do them. That's it. Like, I had no genius, there was no training, I was not with Keller Williams. Like, literally, that's all I did for the first 3 years. And so by 2003 and 2004, between 2003 and 2004, I hit a velocity of 60 units a year on my own. And I was just burning out, making a lot of money. I told you earlier, I was spending it just as fast and working 80 hours a week. And literally, I was like, is this like what you do for 30 years? You just like churn and burn and you're always behind? That sucks. Like, let's come up with a better plan. And so I started to ask some questions. 3 years into the business, I started to ask some questions. Like, wait a minute, how does this whole thing work? What's the plan? Can you build something that's sustainable? Do you sell this thing eventually? Like, would you not? Like, what does that look like? And that led me to hiring my first assistant, which was actually a personal assistant. And I needed help dry cleaning, that sort of stuff. That's actually what ended up being my husband. He started as my assistant for 2 months, and then that changed. This is the non-HR part. Hey, I'm not recommending you do everything I've done. I never said that. Although that worked out well for me, right? So he actually stayed in the business for a long time, but I needed a new assistant pretty darn quick. And so he ended up taking on the office manager role, and then eventually realized his talent is in staging and in design. So he ended up launching his own staging business in 2009. So I started to build the enterprise in 2005, 6. 5 is when I was introduced to Keller Williams, and the idea you could build a sustainable business, which sounded nice, but I had no idea what it meant. 2006 is when I started to play around with that idea. So from 2001 to 2006, it was really all about sales and just hustling and figuring out a routine of personal production. In 2006, we launched our first Keller Williams Capital Properties office, and by then I actually had a few people working with me on my team, and I realized the mistakes I was personally okay with making when it was just me were really unacceptable when I started to introduce other people into my life. So excuses I had about money and other things, I managed myself, but when I had other people who I was responsible for, I was like, whoa, like game has changed. I need to elevate this a little bit. And that journey started in 2006. So you'll notice like there's a gap in the timeline from 2006 to 2011. Because that's when it was really freaking hard. Right? That's when I grew the team and it imploded. And I grew it again and it imploded. That's when we launched 3 more brokerages, and it was very challenging. It's when I got an account with Fannie Mae to sell all their REO properties, and 2 years later I lost it and nearly had to declare bankruptcy. Like, all of that happened between 2006 and 2011, and there wasn't enough room on the screen. So that's like really where I learned a lot about the reality of running a business. 2011 is when my leadership journey began. And I started taking on leadership roles because, in part, the brokerage system was big enough that I needed it, and I had just managed my way to make investments in several other places with the cash I had. And in 2011, I looked up and I was like, oh man, like, my business is outstripping my capacity intellectually to understand what's going on. It's getting ahead of me. I need to get ahead of it. And so 2011, I started that journey around leadership, took a team leader role in the office. Fast forward, 2018, the spring of 2018 was another big shift. It's when I finally had managed to assemble the right configuration of leaders in the various businesses to step all the way out of the operational roles of the businesses. So this last June, I stepped all the way out of all day-to-day operations in the business, and now I spend about 40 hours a month on all the different real estate businesses, which are the brokerage, the sales team, and the title companies, and the development deals that we do. So that's the journey. It's been a long haul, 18 years. It didn't just happen overnight, but along the way, I think I picked up a few things, and my hope is to share them with you today. All right? So how do you get the most out of this experience? Well, it depends on what kind of student you're going to be. I always want to just check, do I have any prisoners in the room that they have to be here, they don't want to be here, they're not even sure why they're here, and they're hoping lunch is free? Do I have any prisoners in the room?
Just the last part. I'm just
So some of you are here just for lunch. Okay, all right, I got it. You know, I don't usually have a lot of prisoners in this kind of class. You know, not normally. So it sounds like we have willing participants. But maybe I've got a couple of vacationers. A day in training is better than a day on the job any day of the week. Do you have any vacationers who are already zoned out a little bit? They're like, his voice is nice. Any vacationers? They're usually in the back. You guys okay back there? Yeah? Okay, no vacation. All right, what about explorers? They're excited and curious about the new skills and knowledge and tools they're going to learn today. Do I have explorers in the room today? Yeah. Awesome. Okay, and some of you are going to raise your hand. I don't care what you put up there. I'm not raising my hand. Like that, a couple of you? Yeah. All right, fair enough. Well, you know that. Yeah. Hey, East Coast skepticism. Yeah. All right, so let's get going. So I want you to open up your books here or online, and let's kind of dive in here. And simple word through the perspectives tab. Good morning. Hi there. We saved a seat right up front for you. All right, so go to your perspectives tab. Go to page 2, where it says develop a financially sound business. I just want to make sure everybody's tracking anything. It looks like this. Page 2, develop a financially sound business. Raise your hand if you're with me there. All right, awesome. If you're not with me, then let me know. We'll put you up front here, and I can pay extra attention to you. Anybody not with me? All right, okay, all right. Fair enough. Okay, so develop a financially sound business. This course, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. This course prepares you for the 6 habits that ensure a financially sound business. One is we're going to set a profit goal that funds whatever it is you're up to, and we'll let you pursue the activities to achieve it. 2 is we're going to help you estimate, save for, and pay your taxes on time. We're going to talk about that, not only conceptually, but I'm going to give you sort of tips of what I actually do. Throughout this course, I'm going to tell you what the concepts are, and then I'll tell you what I'm doing. In most cases, they match. Sometimes they don't, but I want you to kind of hear both the concepts so you can discern for yourself what you want to do, but then I'll also give you lots of, and this is what I do, tips, all right? We're going to use models to kind of go through some of this stuff. So let me ask you, we talk a lot about models, but I think the word might be a little overused. Can somebody tell me, without using the word models, what are models? Sir?
Proven processes or systems that you can follow.
Okay, I like that, I like that, I like that. We'll give you, thank you. Another take on that? One other thing.
Was a proven example?
Say again?
A proven example?
Proven example, good, we're in the ballpark. Sir?
Maybe a roadmap by somebody who's been there before.
A roadmap of somebody who's been there before. There's one other element to models I like, and I just want to pull out. Anybody know? Formula? Yes, these are all correct.
Is it something that's structured?
Yeah. Yes. Game plan? A game plan? Yes, yes. I'll give you one more shot. Perspective is really, really close. I like to call it, say again?
Predictability?
Predictability, yeah. Best practices. That's just kind of where I like it. Yeah, you guys are really smart, I can tell. You're already overthinking it, let's get going in. No, best practices, right? So models are not perfection. Models aren't what everybody does. Models, and they're not necessarily, that's interesting. They're not necessarily proven, although most of the time they're proven at least for long enough that they're predictably accurate, but they're best practices. So we're going to be introducing best practices that work today in these different areas. That's another way of saying models. We want you to be fiscally savvy by reviewing your financials monthly and talk about all that's required in order to get up to that point, pay yourself a salary, prepare now for a financially secure future. Awesome. Anybody not want to do those things? Yeah, okay, that's kind of obvious. So page 3, if we say which which business is it? Do you have? Do you have an unsound business or do you have a sound business? So what sort of classifies that from a financial standpoint? And this is a good time for you to start to kind of get into yourself a little bit and start to just do a real honest assessment of yourself. Not to judge yourself, simply to say, where am I now? Because the only way you're going to be able to progress is if you get super grounded in the reality of where you are now. All right? So unsound. Inhibits your ability to grow. It reduces your effectiveness, it takes your time, it creates unneeded stress, it can be expensive. Sound is a lot less worry-free and stress-free. I don't know that that always entirely goes away, but it's lessens. And allows you to take advantage of opportunities, frees up you so you can do more, makes you more money, and prepares you for challenging times ahead. Now let's ground this into some example. So let's look at a financially unsound business or flow of money. So let's review these two little scenarios. So scenario one, new agent Mary. Do we have any Marys in the room? No, okay, because we often use that name as an example. I always like to clear, make sure we don't have any Marys in the room. All right, so new agent Mary earns a commission of $9,000. And after paying her broker, she receives a check in the amount of $57.60. She deposits it in her personal bank account to pay for personal credit card debt and household expenses. That is example one. Now, what's wrong with that? Let's just, so she did that. What's the big deal? What's your thought about that? Sir?
She's treating it like a job, not a business.
What's the impact of that, though?
Well, it's a paycheck, it's not a, there's no forward thinking, there's no tax savings, there's no, no sinking fund, no repairing equipment later on in the future, upgrading, et cetera.
Good. So she may not be recognizing that there's a lot of other expenses associated with being in business, and it doesn't appear, at least from that example, she's accounting for that. Good. What else? What else is?
But if she only has a regular bank account, isn't that where else can she put it?
Right. If
Does
she,
not have a business.
so why does that even matter, though? Why? Who cares? What's the impact of that?
There's no way.
Making herself way more liable.
Potentially, she could be creating some legal liability for herself. Yes.
Well, if she's paying double tax essentially as an S corp, she could be taking out a percentage.
Very interesting. She may be unnecessarily paying more in taxes than she needs to because she doesn't have the structure right. Nice. Very nice job. Pretty good here, 940.
She hasn't put any away for taxes, so she's
She
paying
hasn't,
more.
yeah, she hasn't likely. I don't know about you, but the money that goes into my general checking account, there's a whooshing sound. Like it's, it goes out. Like I don't even, it's amazing to the degree to which, unless purposefully putting pressure on that money before it gets into that operating account, it just goes. And she's not accommodating or accounting for that possibility. Okay, good. So let's look at a different scenario. Scenario two, new agent Mary receives her check in the amount of $57.60, and she deposits it into her business bank account to cover her business expenses. She pays herself a salary of $4,032, which goes into her personal bank account to pay for her personal expenses. And then she transfers 40% of her salary, which is $1,613 from her personal account, to a tax savings account. Nice. This leaves Mary with $2,419 to pay household expenses and household and living expenses. I articulated it a little incorrectly there. I think you see where the flow is on the chart. So, looking at this and seeing, okay, we started with $9,000, and at the end of the day, Mary's wallet is $2,419. She's got $1,613 that went into taxes, and two kinds of taxes down there you'll see. She's got $1,728 that went into a business account. When you look at that, what realization do you have? Anything? Any ahas as you just look at that, or any comments on that? Yes? All right, thank you. That was my first comment. I was like, what? That's what I meant. So I'm starting with 9, and I'm ending in my own wallet with maybe $2,400. Like that kind of sucks. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. What else do you think?
Well, the actual amount is, you she would have just blown on her household expenses, feeling like she made a lot of money, i.e. like what most of us do in our first year.
Yeah.
Right, well, then you think of that tax bill at the end of the year, you know, mine was $47,000. And I had to write that check.
Yeah.
And, you know, so you don't have it.
Yeah, right, good.
Yeah.
I love that. I'll tell you, what I love about this realization is, I sort of have the attitude in life, which is, if I really understand the reality of the situation, I can deal with it, and I can make it work. But in absence of actually understanding the reality of it, I'm sort of, I don't know, overly optimistic often, which is sort of my behavioral profile, and not grounded in the impact associated with it. So if I know that if I'm starting with 9, but at the end of the day I really only have 2,400, okay, I can figure out what to do with that. But when I'm fooling myself thinking I'm starting with 9 and I actually have 9, then nobody's served. Did you have a comment, sir, back there, or was that just a stretch? That was a stretch. Okay, all right, perfect. So let's take a look now at go to page 6, because we started to talk about success, but I actually want you to tell me a little bit more about how you're actually viewing success. So look at page 6. How do you actually measure success? You currently measure success in some way, I would imagine. Is it how much money you have in the bank account, or how many closings you have this month, or the size of your database? I'm just curious, like, for you, how do you measure success? Just a couple popcorn volunteers. Yep.
Mine's volume.
So yeah,
Volume.
volume. So you look at volume and you're like, okay, I'm on track when I hit my volume. Good. Other people use a different number, a different metric.
Gross commission.
Sir? Oh, that was another scratch. I gotta watch that. You guys are jittery. Yeah.
Number of transactions.
Number of transactions, okay, great.
And net profit.
Net profitability, okay. Anybody else have any other? Okay, so these are basically the ways you can, some of the ways you can look at it. You can look at it gross commission income, you can look at volume, units closed, net income, profitability, money in the bank. Multi-trends is a bunch of other numbers. The language of real estate is where you are compared to the market, so you're looking at yourself in comparison to other folks. I would like today to take a stand and ask you to start to measure your success on the net profitability of your business. So today, let's take a stand and start to measure your success on the net profitability of your business. Now, this is particularly hard, I think, in our industry. Why?
Because it's so easy to fool ourselves.
I would agree, it's easy to fool ourselves. Why else is it hard for us as an industry, as a community, to take a stand and measure our success on net profitability, sir?
I think for me, it's like kind of hard to keep track of a lot of my expenses.
Good. One is, it's actually harder to do. Yes, good. What else?
That's it. I mean, we don't treat ourselves like a business, and so we're not tracking our expenses. We don't see our costs in and out. It's harder to do. We don't know. We don't know. We don't even know how to measure that number.
It's hard to do. Yeah, we don't know how to get to it. There's another big reason.
We all get like accolades and rewarded for volume, but nobody recognizes what we spent to get there.
Yeah.
It's basically
As an industry, we do ourselves a disservice because we're often rewarding all the other things that may or may not correlate to net profitability, right? And part of it's because that stuff's easy to track. We can see that. Like, I can look in the system today and see what your unit count is, and what your volume is, what your average sales price is, and how much you made in gross commission income. Unless you somehow give me the data, I have no idea what your actual net income is. I can guess, but I don't actually know what it is. And probably because you don't either. Right? And so part of reverse engineering all of this and getting better as business people is to say, you know what, I'm good getting the award for big units and big volume and big this or big that. But at the end of the day, what matters to my family and to me is the net profitability of my enterprise. And if you start with that thought pattern, then it starts to inform all the other things that you're trying to accomplish in regards to, quote, success. right? So it's nice to get the accolades and the awards and the medal. But I will tell you, a dirty little secret in our business is there's a lot of people walking across the stage with massive production in minuscule nets. I know. I mean, we're in these rooms. Like, we talk to people that when, you know, a couple drinks in, they're like, I love it. I got this huge award, but you know what, man? Like, I made 150 grand last year. Right? And I'm like, wow, your gross is 3.5 million. Right? So, nobody in this room going forward, right? Let's take a stand and work on getting the net profitability. Comment back here?
Yeah, I have a buddy who's a top producer over in Jersey for the purple rotaries.
Yep.
And every year he's borrowing 100 to 120,000 a year from his broker to pay his taxes. Every year, for like the last 10 years. And he's everybody's golden child.
Yeah. I wish that was rare. It's not. So imagine the possibilities. Well, when you get your act together, you can fund the life that you've always wanted to live. You can actually grow your business. You can invest in your future. You can build a legacy. And, that's all good stuff. So go to page 9. I want you to do just, this is for your eyes only. I want you to go through page 9, and I want you to do a self-assessment right now. And check the boxes on these things. Do you, for example, have a stated profit goal for the year? Check yes, no, sometimes. So we're going to take, 30 seconds, East Coast time. Go through this. If you could do this exercise now, this would be good. This is for you only, by the way. You're not going to need to share this. I want you, though, to begin to ground yourself in the perspective of where you are on the journey of a financially sound business. And I'll be quiet for a few seconds. Go ahead. Just a couple more seconds. Okay. Great. So how many people are just a tiny bit stressed out? That's great. Yeah, that's great. So here's what I want us to ground in is chances are, as you went through that exercise, some judgment came up where you judged yourself to some degree or to a large degree of all the things you should be doing but you're not. All right, so I want you to repeat after me. I forgive myself for judging myself. Go ahead.
I forgive myself for judging myself.
Awesome. So let's just start with that. Like, it does you no good to judge yourself for not being where you want to be. You're just going to be stuck in that energy. Instead, I want you to just acknowledge where you are now, and we're going to move forward from here. And every day is an accomplishment as a result. Okay? Got it? Good. Go to page 10. I want you to, on page 10 at the top of the page, I want you to write down one thing you want to get out of this class. At the top of page 10, just one thing you want to get out of the class. What is your primary goal and objective today to get out of class? Write that down on the top of page 10, and go ahead and do that now. Okay, got it? All right, let's keep moving. Go to page 12. Go to page 12, the core conversations. We're going to just touch on this briefly, but I want to make sure you know it's here. So KW offers what we call the Career Growth Initiative, CGI. And anybody has anybody gone into KW Connect and gone into the CGI area of KW Connect? And have you actually utilized the CGI tool? Has anybody done that? Raise your hand if you have. Okay, a few of you. Okay, awesome. So the CGI tool is a wonderful technological tool to help you track a bunch of the stuff we're going to be going through today. I'm gonna go through a lot of the manual calculations of things today, but I want you to know that almost all of what we're gonna talk about today, an online tool has been developed to assist you so you don't have to do all the manual calculations. So that is, if you go to KW Connect, at the top, you go to CGI, Career Growth Initiative, click down and start to explore that. So spend a few minutes each day or a few minutes each week and go through that. But you'll see that it's a great tool to be able to track your listing appointments, listings taken, closings, and profit. So let's go to page 13 and look at some of these MREA models. Actually, go to page 14. I think this is a better way to look at it. So let's start with the flow of money. And this is very elementary, but it's good to ground in this. So the flow of money is you've got income, right? Think of your economic model as your flow of money. You get paid, you spend money, and you have some left over. What goes in, what goes out, what's left over is sort of income, expenses, and profit, right? Now, let's take a look in more detail at each of those different things. So go to page 15. So income, I think we got, right? Most of us know what the income part is, right? You sell a house, you get some money. But what goes out? Let's talk about one of the first categories for you to start to understand very clearly, and it's called cost of sale. Cost of sale. So let me ask you, what is cost of sale? What is cost of sale? Anybody know? Yep.
The price of making a sale.
The cost of the price of making a sale.
Like the amount of money you put into your business divided by the number of sales, I guess.
Okay. Awesome ideas, Mika. Thank you though for being willing to mention that. Yes, sir.
So the amount that would be paid out of that commission check. So for example, if you have to pay brokerage fees, if you bought signs for your, to put up, if you advertise and that costs a certain amount, if you have a team member that you had to pay a certain percentage to.
So you're partially right. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else want to take a stab at it? Cost of sale.
With marketing, how much do you have to pay to actually get the property sold?
No. Good guess though. Yes.
All the expenses that went into sale, so closing the gift, the sign, gas spent, everything that went into it.
Nope. Yep. One more guess.
Is it like the cost associated with like getting that sale and then also like executing that sale to the finish line?
Conceptually, yes. Specifically, what do we label as cost of sale?
Your operating expenses.
One more, yep. Say again? Commission and fees, yes. You're very, yes, and there's some more. So let's look at it this way. So GCI, what does that stand for? Okay, good. So you get your money. But have you noticed that the amount that's on the settlement sheet for your commission doesn't always match your check that you get, that gets deposited into your bank account? Have you noticed that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, probably, right? So what happened? What happened? Right? What was the magic? You had this nice check, or you saw on the settlement sheet 10 grand, but then when you get your check, it's like, I don't know, 70 something, 700 or 7,000 something, right? This little pot right here is called your cost of sale. And the cost of sale includes a handful of components, but not many. So you mentioned a couple of them. What are the deductions, we'll call them, that are here that really need to come out before you can spend any money on anything else? The brokerage fee, that's right. So if you're with Keller Williams, that would be company dollar, if you're not capped, right? Great.
Right.
What else?
Franchise fee.
The royalty, yeah, who said that? Yep, right, so you got royalty,
And this office we have Philadelphia wage tax.
which is 3% up to, or I'm sorry, 6% up to $3,000, right? Say again?
And in this office, we also have Philadelphia wage tax.
Um,
Goes right off the top.
Okay, yep, that comes off the top structurally because of the jurisdiction, but it is actually not cost of sale. We'll talk about that in a second. What else though is actually cost of sale?
Referral fee.
Referral fee. Yeah, so if you paid a referral fee to another agent, that also is cost of sale. There's one more category that is considered cost of sale. Anybody know what it is?
Commissions and splits.
Yes, your splits with your agents, if you have any on your team. If you don't have any on your team, then you don't have any of that, right? So, company dollar, royalty, any referral fees that you paid, and any expenses, or excuse me, any commission splits you have with agents are considered your cost of sale. Now, the reason this is a tiny, tiny bit confusing is because you have a ton of other expenses that when you talk to a CPA or a bookkeeper, they may call those other things also cost of sale. So there's no necessarily super right or super wrong way of doing it, but best practices are to limit the cost of sale categories to these things so that we're all speaking the same language. That's it. I mean, you could throw a bunch of other stuff in there and call it a cost of the sale. We don't, because we're trying to get everybody to structure their financial profit and loss statement similarly so that we can all speak a very similar language. Does that make sense? So cost of sale, and it's right here in your book on page 15. Cost of sale is the commissions paid to the office, it's the royalty fees, commissions paid to employees or independent commissions paid to employees or independent contractors, and referral fees. So that stuff goes out. Now let's take a look at this in a little more detail, sir.
So is this more just a psychological thing? Because this never, like this would never impact your gross, that your account would know about, because this would all come out before it's ever your money. So is it more just a psychological thing to know that when you see a 3% commission, that you just know that this is gonna, that you'll never actually see that full 3% because of the big number?
Is it a psychological thing? In part, yes. I think it is also, I think maybe the heart of your question is, why does that matter? Is that maybe a little bit?
Yeah.
I
I know that I'm not getting the 3%, I'm getting something less.
I would say tracking this matters for a couple reasons. One is, as you grow, and you're trying to make decisions about what your business capacity actually is, you need to know what your gross commission generated actually is. And in absence of doing these calculations here, most people actually start their accounting at the bottom of the page, right here. Most people start their books. When I do an analysis of agent books, most people start with this number right here as the starting number, but that's actually inaccurate. Your business generated this number up here, and why that's important to track is because you, as the business owner, need to know how much money your business actually generated, period. Because these things vary depending on what brokerage firm you're with, how many referral fees you give or don't give, and how many agents you are, you have or don't have on your team. So that's one, is I'd say the capacity of your business, as you grow, you want to be able to measure the growth of that. That's huge. The other is, if you're not properly accounting for this, then you're also probably not properly accounting for the tax liability or tax benefit associated with these deductions. So there are tax benefits to categorizing this correctly so that it's actually marked as an expense for you. That's another big one that's also super important.
So sorry.
Sure.
That goes back to my question before, is once you get a check from Keller Williams, it would only be that bottom line, right? You would never have seen that, those cost of sales, so you would never have to account for them on your taxes.
You actually do. You have to.
By the way, I've never had a sale, so I'm.
Yep, you do. You actually, on your taxes, you need to have your gross income on there. Yep, and not everybody does. But having been through 3 audits, I will tell you that is what's actually required. Is you want to have your gross income on there, and then be able to delineate what your deductions are. No?
The way I like to think about it is it's your gross profit. So in real accounting language, it would be considered gross profit, right? So it's your total income minus your cost of sale. And what you're left with is your gross profit, which is actually what you deposit into the bank. before expenses. That's how I like to think about it.
Yeah, yep. And I'll tell you the other reason why it's important to manage money. I love your question, which by the way is so critical. Like, why does it matter? Why do you need to go through all this stuff in order to get it? It's because as you grow, if you're not tracking these things as it relates to a percentage of these things, these can get out of whack. And you can start to have agent splits, for example, with people on your team that are too large as a percentage of your gross, which makes your overall net profit unnecessarily low. And unless you track that along the way, you don't know that's actually happening. And you start to run an increasingly inefficient business and don't even know that. So as you start to grow the business, you'll see the implication of it. You know, one deal may be weird, but let me tell you, at 500 deals or even 100 deals, this stuff really starts to matter so that you can play around with that. The other thing is I've seen agents who grow gigantic businesses on referral fees. But then they see, oh my gosh, we're, you know, spending a couple $100,000 a year on referral fees. As a business owner, then seeing this, you can decide if you want to do anything about it. So for me, it's just visibility, being able to see where the money is actually going all the time. Yeah.
So like when you get your 1099 from the broker, it's going to be the bottom number there. That was your actual income that was paid here. How do you?
Actually, I believe the 1099 is going to come up here. I have to ask an MCA. I think the 1099 is going to come here. So, okay, could be. Again, having gone through 3 audits and getting pinged on this twice, track up here. Because then you can reconcile all this stuff that's going on through here.
And also just coming from a brokerage that didn't always have a cap structure.
True. Yep, that's true. Yeah, good. Any other comments on cost of sale? Okay, good. So cost of sale on page 16, let's dig in a little bit more. So your gross commission income, GCI, is the amount you get paid based on the sales price of your transaction. We'll use 3% for each side in this case. GCI is not what you receive as a commission check. The amount you receive reflects the amount deducted that you pay to your broker, Keller Williams Realty International. Here's your deductions. And you'll see GCI times 30% is the amount paid to the broker, company dollar, right? Up to a maximum amount of your cap. In this case, the cap here is, on this example is $20,000. Yours is 25, right? So CGI times 6% is the amount of royalty you pay up to a maximum of $3,000, and the net is what you have left. Now, what's interesting is if you look at the cost of sale effect on net in cap versus not cap, I think you can imagine that as you start to do more deals in a cap model, right, this number here eventually goes away, the company dollar goes away, and your royalty goes away, and that allows you to continue to increase your cap, or excuse me, your net. It's one of the benefits of a cap model. Any questions on that? Okay. So let's go to page 17 and look at all these other stuff, right? So many of them are like, well, what's cost of sale? And you mentioned a lot of the things that are actually in operating expenses. So operating expenses, if you look at it here, is kind of like everything else, right? It's rent if you're leasing an office, it's your auto, it's salaries, it's insurance, professional services, marketing, education equipment, and so forth. Everything else is your expenses. So you've got your gross profit here. Now you have all of your expenses. And now you've got your net profit here. Now, what has not yet been paid? Right. So this is sometimes just called pre-tax net profit, right? So no taxes have been paid yet, but you've still got now a net profitability number. What's left over at the bottom here is your net profit or your net income. And depending on your structure is a pretty close number to what you're likely to be taxed on. Now it's not exact, because there's a lot of complication in the tax law. So I can't say, definitely take a percentage of your net profit and that's your tax. It's not as clean as that, but it's close. It's pretty darn close in terms of figuring out what your tax is. Go to page 18. So let's do a little mini example here and see if we can ground this into some reality for you. So let's reverse engineer it a little bit. So let's begin with a profit goal of $250,000. And let's work backwards to calculate how much gross commission income you would have to make in order to receive $250,000 in net profitability. Now, to do that, what do you need to know? You need to know your expenses, yeah? And your cost of sale. So back to models, we're going to take some model best practices based on a moderate scale business as these percentages. So you'll see in operating expenses, you see the number 30%. We're going to assume 30% in operating expenses, and we're going to assume 30% in cost of sales. So we're going to assume for a minute that your cap, the royalty, referral fees you pay, and any splits on your agents, this is going to be 30%. And we're going to assume that you have 30% in expenses, so what percent then do you have for net profitability? 40. Yeah, great. I know, we're starting in the math. Yeah, good. So if you want to make 250,000, so we're getting into some math, you may want to bring out your phone. If you want to make 250,000, and you know that you've got about 30% in expenses and about 30% in cost of sale, how do you calculate what the gross income needs to be in order for you to make 250,000?
It's 625, right?
Divided by 40%.
Divided by 40%.
Yes. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that now. So take 250,000.
It's 625.
625. Perfect. So that's 250,000. Now I want you to take your net profitability number. So take whatever profit number you want to generate for 2019, and just fill that in down there. Instead of 250, cross out whatever you want. Do the math and tell me what gross income you need to generate in order for you to get your net profitability next year. Anybody have a number?
It's 250.
So
250 to make 100 profit.
250 to make 100 profit.
Yeah, I did 100 and I made about 120 last year, but that's not profit. That was just what I made. So.
Okay. Did you actually do the math on that? Like last year, or
Oh,
did you
no.
just guess? Okay.
No. Last year I just know what I came home with, but not what I actually expensed.
Okay.
And that's why I'm here today.
Okay, great. So great, thank you. So somebody give me another number that you came up with for your gross income. 300,000 is what you need to generate in gross commission income in order to get your net. Okay, great. What's another number? Anybody have higher than 300,000 in gross commission income required in order for you to get your net? Yeah. How much do you have? 625 is what you have to do. So you want to make that to 250. Okay, great. Anybody have any higher than 625? No one does, yeah. Anybody else? Yes?
750.
750. Okay, good. All right, so now, we reverse engineered it a little bit, but it's still not informative enough, is it? Like, you don't just make 750, like something has to happen. So what's the next step now to determine how many homes you need to sell in order to make your gross income?
Divided by 3%, to assume that's what
The 4 conversations.
Yeah, but let's walk through it. Okay. So, yes?
You have to know what your average selling price is.
Thank you. You need to know what your average sales price is. If you don't know what your average sales price is, you have to guess. Right? So now, what do you do with that number? So you need to know what your average sales price is.
Like my average selling price is 250,000.
Okay?
Over New Jersey. So 80% of my business is over New Jersey.
Okay?
3% of 250,000 is 6750.
Good. So not only do you need to know your average sales price, you need to know your average
Rate of commission.
gross commission check. Yeah, so you need to know your average gross commission check. You got that? All right, so you all came up with now a gross number based on the net profit. Now my question to you is, do you know what your average gross commission check is? If you don't, then you need to guess in today's exercise. But flag that as saying, well, I don't actually know what it is, and so this is a guesstimate for you right now. But let's go ahead and either take a number you think is close, or if you're new to the business, guess of what your average commission check would be. And what do you do with that then? What do you do with that number?
Divided by the amount that you want to make.
Divided, I heard a mumble and it sounded right.
Divided by the the GCI.
Divided by the gross commission amount. Yeah, so go ahead and do that now. So take an average commission check, gross commission check you think you will receive, and divide it by the total gross income you said you needed to have, which was calculated by you deciding how much net profit you wanted to make, and that should give you what number? How many deals you need to do. Okay? All right, so did anybody get all the way down the line and calculate that? How many deals do you actually need to do? Yes? 32. Okay, can you walk us through those numbers, please? So that we can just sort of hear your thinking process on that?
Taking it from the top.
Yeah.
So I said I wanted to net 150.
You wanted a net 150, okay?
Yeah, 375.
Okay, hold that thought. All right, so you wanted a net, pretty much second week. So you wanted a net 150. Okay, and so what did you do here?
Well, I got 450 from 375 would be the gross.
Okay, how did you get from 150 to 375?
I did 40% of 375.
So 40%, okay? All right, so this was, what is this number here?
GCI.
So this is your gross. What did you do from there?
So that got me to 150. Then I took my average sales price, which is 400.
Okay? So you said, I have a 400K average sales price,
Yep.
and then what did you do?
Then I multiply that by 3% to get my average commission at 12,000.
3%, so you said, I think I have an average commission check of $12,000.
And then I took 375 and divided it by, I think, 375 divided by, yeah.
So then you took 375 and 12,000. You did some division, and you came up with
31 and a quarter, so it was 36.
31.25 units for sales.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Let's get one more person to walk us through their math. Okay, so somebody else tell me, what numbers did you come up with? Yes, sir.
Alright, so I guess my first question is, are we sticking with the 30%, what goes out, and then what's left over is 40%?
For now, you are, yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I'm not-
because you're like, I don't have 30% of the cost of, is that what you?
No, I've always, I've been doing this 6 years, and I've always tried to have like the total expenses be 20% of revenue.
Great.
That's been like my metric since I started.
Awesome.
So I'm at a point now where I'm like planning to kind of scale up, and I'm sort of struggling with like, is that still scalable or is that still doable?
Probably not. That you will have to scale up your expenses to scale. And that percentage is actually designed to try to teach that idea to agents who've kept their expenses really, really low. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. Like, how many people actually, they felt like they were in that slot where they knew enough about their financials to be like, I don't think I'm spending that much. You raise your hand if you felt possibly that. Yeah, good. And that, if you're in a smaller scale solo agent, that is very likely the case. As you grow, though, it's going to get bigger. So the best exercise, of course, are your actual numbers of what your actual expenses are. But then as you grow and scale, this is going to be tricky. Don't mind them. As you grow and scale, that percentage is going to go up, which is why we love to start with this particular number right now. Great, great, great question. And by the way, a little bit later today, I'm going to show you a graph that shows you based on different levels of scale where that expense number goes. Okay? All right. So somebody walk me through their number calculation, and then we'll take some questions and move on. I'd like to get one more example of this. So who has a net profit bill? Yes, sir.
I did 125,000.
Is your net that you wanted?
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
net I wanted.
So you wanted to do 125,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I divided that by 40%. And I got my gross commission at $312,500.
312,500, okay, and what'd you do?
And then I did, I just took my average sales price at like 300,000. I multiplied that by, I did it by 0.0275.
Okay.
I thought that was more realistic.
Okay,
So that puts me at 8,250.
8,250,
So then I did 312,500 divided by that number, and it's 37.
312,500 divided by 8,250, and gave you what?
37, like, 0.2.
37.2 deals a year. Okay, awesome, great. If you did not, if you are lost, I want you to come see me at break, and we're gonna walk through that math for you, because that is the fundamental first step of getting all this to work. Because it's great to build out a profit and loss statement, but unless it's grounded in the reality of what you were trying to accomplish, it's just an intellectual exercise. So, okay, so now you've got 37, or 31.25, or 60, or 12, or whatever. What do you now do with that?
How many appointments do you need, or, well, how many listings do you need to take, how many appointments do you need, how many contacts, schedule how many appointments?
Great, so now, you now have a result that you need to generate, a number of deals you need to accomplish. Let's call that our lag indicator, all right? Your lag indicator is the number of deals you need to generate. Now, the lag indicator is the amount of profit you need to generate. But for now, we're gonna say your lag indicator is the number of deals you wanna generate over the course of the year. Let's talk about what the lead indicator is. So, lag and lead indicators. I'll give you a different example, so you got this. So, probably one of the best examples of lag indicator is weight loss or weight gain, right? Because everybody can relate to that. So every week, I actually, with my personal trainer on Mondays, I get on the scale and measure my weight, and then I do the little, body fat thing, and it gives you your body fat, right? And
Gives you what?
the body fat measurement, right? And so every Monday, I get clear readings of my lag indicators, which is my weight and my current body fat percentage. Now that's great to know, but what's the problem with that? How is that helpful and not helpful? What do you think? I mean, you've been on this journey, probably, right? So what's good about that? What's not helpful about that? Yeah.
It gives you a metric to look at, but it's not always accurate.
Okay. What is it? Let's assume for a minute it's accurate enough. Okay, but it gives me a metric to look at. Yeah.
Tells you where you are, but not how you got there.
True, yeah, it tells me where I am now, but doesn't necessarily tell me how I got there, yeah.
You might have higher levels of growth and lower levels of growth as far as like an up and down in your journey.
Okay, so it's a moment in time, but it doesn't really show me necessarily trajectory. Yeah.
Let's say by Monday, you can't control it. At that point, you can't control the results.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, right, it's done. Right, the number's there. And I did actually, this last Monday was kind of funny, so I'm doing it. And I don't know why I did this, I did it, and I go, and my trainer goes, what was that? I was like, I don't know what that was. I guess I was hoping, I was like, I'd blow on it and it'd get a better number. I don't know, it was like one of those random weird moments that made no sense. Right, but that's the issue with like it's done. Like the number is what the number is, and all the work associated with, or not work, associated with that number is complete. I can't do anything about it, right? The good thing is though, it's very trackable, right? Our lag indicators generally are easily tracked. It's easy for me to step on the scale. It's easy for me to go like that, and we can get a number. Same with our unit count, right? It's easy to track our unit counts. But what about the lead indicators? So what's the lead indicator in weight loss and weight gain?
Calorie intake,
Calorie intake.
Activity, diet, water, and rest.
exercise amount.
Yeah, like exercise amount, diet, water,
Rest.
rest. You have all these other issues. How easy is it for you to track how many calories you're burning over the course of a day? Anybody do that? Anybody try to do that? Like, that's hard, right? You can guess how many calories you're eating, but to get how many calories you're burning, it's about your metabolic rate. You gotta get on this treadmill with this like mask on. You gotta run for a while. Then they measure your metabolic rate. It changes as you like actually tracking your lead indicators is an exceedingly challenging exercise to get right. And yet, the lead indicators are the only things that we can actually impact on a day-to-day basis. Right? I can decide if I can eat something or if I can exercise or not. Now let's move it back into your business. So we've got a lag indicator of profitability, and we've got a lag indicator of units. What's the lead indicator?
Size of your database or?
Probably not size of your database.
Appointments, calls.
Calls, the contacts is probably the furthest most lead indicator, or one of them. But the most logical and easiest one to track are your appointments. So your appointments will determine your profitability. Your appointments determine your profitability. It's just there's all these different chains along the way. I mean, look how many chains we've had to establish already. So just to get to the number of deals you needed to do, in order to get the net income you wanted, we had to go through like 4 or 5 different iterations to get to that. Now we need to take it one step further. So okay, 31.25 units in the back. 31.25, what was your name, ma'am? She's on her
Oh,
phone.
sorry, Lindsay.
Yeah, I know, that's right. So 31.25 units, how many appointments do you need to get 31.25 units? No idea. That's the reality. Most of us have no idea. If you did know and you could guess, what do you think it would be? 300. How'd you come up with that number? So 1 in 10 people you meet with would maybe do a deal. Okay? Good. Anybody else have another shot at that?
For her numbers,
How about your numbers, sir? You've been in the business for a while.
I know my numbers. My numbers are, if I take a listing and sell 75% of the time, and when I go on listing appointments, I get 75% of the listings I go on.
Great. So you've done that enough times to know that. So you could actually determine how many units you wanted to do and back out how many appointments you needed to conduct.
Yes.
Do you know what that appointment number is for you?
3 a week.
3 a week? Good. So the whole exercise I've been walking you through, I want you to have grounded in, is I want you to know what the overall lag indicator is over here. I want you to know what your profitability number is you're trying to achieve. Then I want you to be able to know what the gross income is you need to generate in order to achieve your net profitability. But then I want you to know, based on that, how many units you need to do, and then finally, how many appointments you need to conduct in order to get those units. Because profitability at the end of the day, how many people, you look at your net profitability, if you're tracking it, and you will after this class, and you feel a little disempowered about it because it's already done. Right? You've done it or you've not done it, it's done. I want you to set the goal over there, but I want you to manage your activities over here. Right? So the ability to move your business financially to the next level is your full understanding of the entire line. Most of you are oriented in one section or the other in the line. Some of you are obsessed actually with the gross income and the net income. You're making, but you have no idea how many calls you need to make in order to get that net income. Some of you know how many calls you need to make and appointments you need to generate, but you have no idea what the correlation is to the net profitability point. That the net profitability is that you're going to generate. So my goal number 1 for you in this morning session, we'll take a break here in a minute, is I want you to manage the entire line. Manage the entire line. Now, you can do this in CGI, but I'll be honest with you, I actually would rather you get your hands dirty in it and open an Excel spreadsheet. Right? So back to my earlier story, where I was like, there came a point in my career where I took a stand and said, I cannot, if I want to achieve the financial success I see for myself, I cannot delegate my full understanding of that entire line. And the only way I can do it is I gotta get in there like with the numbers in an Excel spreadsheet and play around with it. Okay? So, that's page 18. I know it's a long page. So, going to page 18 actually starts to give you some really good tips on what you can do with the technology that we have. So, page 19, sorry, thank you. So, actually, how many of you have Kelly downloaded on your phone? Most of you? Okay, I want you to take out Kelly, and we're going to do just one fast demo. I want to show you one thing here. Now, I want you, when you pull it up, I want you to ask Kelly, show me my GCI, or excuse me, show me my CGI goals.
Show me my CGI.
Anybody get anything? Oh, you don't have any goals? Oh, that's the first that's happened. Right. So, how many people don't have their CGI goals in Kelly? Yeah, that's most people, and it's because you don't necessarily understand this entire line. Right? So, as soon as you understand this entire line, I want you to later go into CGI, and you have to go into the web interface. I don't think you can do it on your phone. You have to input your goals.
You can now.
You can on your phone?
It says click add goal. And you can do it.
Awesome, okay, great. So on your phone or on the computer interface, once you know what these are, then you can enter them. And then the app is going to be tracking a lot of this progress for you. Now, there's still some manual entry, like for example, we don't know when you do an appointment. You're gonna have to put into the system, oh, I did an appointment. But once you know how many appointments you need to get your net income, then on a daily basis, literally on your app, you can, or weekly basis, you can be tracking how close you are to getting your net income goal. Does that make sense? Okay, what questions do you have about this line of understanding leading indicators of appointments to gross commission income to net income? And what, if any, questions do you have on cost of sale at this point? You guys are riveting this morning. Yeah, okay, good. So what's the number one goal that you need to establish first? Net profitability goal, awesome. And then what is so that's your most light indicator. What's the next thing you need to establish? You get your net income. Gross. The next is cost of goods. Yeah, okay, yeah, but bring it, further down the line.
Your average commission check.
Yep, average commission check, good, which will eventually get you to what number? Number of transactions, and then from number of transactions, that's going to inform what? The appointments that you need to get every day. Great. So that is the first structure for you to set up. All right? So go to page, let's see here. All right, tools and calendar.
If I can just make sure I understand also, then with appointments, so you also need to know the conversion rates in order to be able to accurately assign an appointment.
Yes, that's true. So he's saying you need to know your conversion rates, and that's actually what we were speaking to back there, right? You were like 75%, you were like 1 in 10, I don't know yet, right? So that is correct. Best practices, I'll give you on conversion rates. I'd say that when you are in the business for 20 years, 75% to 90% we'll see as best practices in terms of number of people who meet with you and sign up with you. Here's the good news for you in the back. What's your name, ma'am?
Lindsay.
Lindsay, here's the good news for you. Even when you're new, it's usually not 1 in 10. It's usually about 50%. Like, usually, you know, if you got a decent personality, 50% of the people you meet with, I'm sure you do. About 50% of the people you meet with, especially if they're buyers, are likely to work with you. And that'll help you come up with what your number is. Yes, sir?
Isn't that metric for people that actually meet face to face, or just like leads that you don't call leads?
No.
Face-to-face.
Actual face-to-face appointments.
So, okay, so before we go to break, I want to just sort of ground a perspective. There is the baseline numbers you need to establish, and then there's the advanced numbers you need to establish. The baseline numbers you need to establish are what we went over. If you want to take it to level 2.0, at every iteration of the chain, there's like 2 or 3 more iterations that you could measure. Don't worry about that though, until you're tracking your appointments and you know your net profitability and you know how to get from appointments to net profitability. When you know how to get to appointments to net profitability, you can then go on to step 2. And you can track other things like number of contacts in order to get appointments. And you can discern what kind of contacts have different conversion rates. That's advanced. But if you're not tracking appointments to net profitability, don't worry about that. If you are, come see me at break and we can talk about some of the other metrics you could track along the way. Okay, so what did you learn so far? Anybody have any ahas yet today? I see a couple heads nodding. Yep.
I like you where you said you have to know the whole line.
Know the whole line. Okay, great. What are you going to do with that?
Me personally?
Yes, please.
You know, I spent the last 2 years training for another company,
Yep.
and so I'm back at square one.
Okay.
I mean, I have nearly 1,000 previous sales, but they haven't heard from me in 2 years.
Okay.
So for me, it's rebooting my whole business.
Okay.
And that starts with working the phone, sending out a letter, sending out a personal note.
Okay.
I'm very old school.
All right.
I'm a big believer in, you know, you're gonna be a lot more impressed with a personal note that you get from me
Yep.
than 3 emails that you might never open.
Okay. So you're thinking, how do I execute better conversions and more lead generation? And you got to know the whole line.
Right.
Thank you. Other ahas. What did you learn so far this morning? Sir?
50% for cost of goods and cost of sale, and then 30% for operating. That's not what I'm running at right now, but if
Yep.
you're saying that's the future, then I gotta start budgeting for it.
Excellent. And when we get back from break, we're going to go deeper into the structures. I love though that you're starting to say, oh, that's interesting, because I'm not running at that. Good. That's a really important realization as we go further into the day. That's great.
Would you want to calculate, if you're a high producer, would you want to calculate that at a certain point your cost of sales significantly drops because you cap and sort of factor that in? Or do you kind of just err on the side if you assume that 30% is always there, then you'll be ahead?
So as you grow, you can imagine that yes, your brokerage cost of sale is going to flatten because you're capping. And you're also adding a lot of agents probably to your team. So that means that your other element of cost of sale may increase. So that's why we use that number and say, hey, we want to keep you at 30-ish% of cost of sale and 30% of expenses so that you've got enough profitability. Now, I love that you guys are already tuned into that, because what you're seeing is as people grow, if you're not tracking that, then either your expenses and or your cost of sale can go up. I literally did an analysis with a team the other day who their cost of sale was 40% and their expenses were 50%. So what did that leave them? A tiny net. And I'll tell you, it's not worth running these businesses for a 20% net. It's too much. Service businesses like this, even large businesses at scale like this, you know, if you get under 20 to 25% net, I'm questioning the efficiency of that business. So I love that you guys are already in tune to that. What other ahas have you had so far this morning?
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
You run a large team. Noah, you run a large team. Does the 30, 30, 40 tend to work at your level and at your level still?
So I would say for our level, our net is not 40%, our net is 28%.
Okay, Noah, if you don't mind my asking?
Our cost of sale is much higher, because if unless we're paying agents on our team 30% or less, it's going to be higher. So our cost of sale is higher, but our expenses actually might be lower.
Yeah, and we see that trend a lot.
So your bottom line isn't 40%, it's closer to 28%.
Correct,
Well,
and remember,
the higher your top line revenue, your PCI,
Right.
the lower your expense percentage theoretically could get if your business is scaled properly.
Right, because you got the economics of scale at that point.
Right.
yeah, and remember too, I'm not selling any houses anymore.
Right.
Right, so I'm getting a 20% net, but I'm not actually selling any houses. So,
Right, but your 28% net also includes a CEO's salary.
Correct.
Who runs that team, and
That's right.
you have the equivalent of an MCA who runs your team, and.
Correct.
So you have an entire organizational structure, and the money trickles down to you because you started it all.
that's right. So when we come back from break, we're gonna start getting detailed into how you structure and start to track all this, because you're starting to see the value of knowing what your numbers actually are. Because you can start to, over time especially, have some information, historical information and context of your business, and begin as a business owner to discern decisions like that. Do I bring on a buyer agent or not? Do I hire an assistant or not? A business owner goes to their P&L and says, well, what is my expense as it relates to my gross? What's the actual best practices, and makes decisions based on information like that. So when we get back from the break, we're gonna go into that a little bit more and talk about the structure, and then we're gonna also start to dive into P&L. But let's take a little break, give everybody a chance to refresh. So I've got 10:38, let's take a 10-minute break. I'll see you here at 10:50. Weird things about the woman city street. So it's, I don't know.
I know a lot of people that were involved 6-7 years ago. Luckily, because those people are still there, except for her. I've met her several times. I know her. Massive. So I just gotta not screw up things massive. Well, we're due. There's no way I can do that. It's all over. I was gonna cancel it from the class, but I was like, let me go.
Yeah, the sales cycle is long.
You must have just missed it. I love it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because the number of so on the lead indicator, yeah, I would say, I would still bring on these images, but I would be tracking yeah, yeah.
Oh my god, that Burberry is so beautiful. Maybe you would. Huh? Oh god. I Forever 21 really try to replicate Burberry. I'll wear one of these days. Like, you're like literally. I'm gonna totally look at you can put it off.
Tell you So there's a percentage associated with each of those increments. Percentage of people who would sign up, percentage of people sign up. Percentage of those actually close the deal, right? So when you go to those percentages, you can take how many people are going to do a better job of splitting some money to it. So then, I think you're overthinking it. So if your cost of sales is low, it's easier to mitigate your standard. Just do the numbers based on your cost of sales. But what I heard you say, and actually this is probably a because your expense structure is probably maybe you're only spending 10% of your gross expenses on investing in non-business or in general.
Right. So basically,
Who does sheriff sales?
Yeah, you've been recording, you've been live on the line this year now.
Yeah, your conversations live on Facebook. Give away secrets. Okay, almost $1 million deal. It's out in the open. You gotta be a ninja in this business.
It goes in waves. It's like 2 or 3 waves a year where I'm like, starting meetings on transactional business where we can continue to profit. Then they close and I'm like, oh, yeah,
I'm just gonna sit right here.
I'm sitting right here because my leg can get more room. It's not the legs.
I don't get it. Oh.
That's why I didn't expect you to get that. Obviously, hope you don't have balls.
So what have I missed out on? Goodies.
You went over like this. like most important numbers net. So you know you want a net 150. You got 40% left over. You got a gross 35K in gross commission. In order to get that, it's 400K average sales price, 30% commission, 12K gross commission per transaction, which is 34 sales. But he went over a lot more. It's just like the importance of tracking it. I came in late, like as you know. Not as late as you.
Oh, we were fucking late. I'm still.
Thank you, dude. I would have made it.
Did you pick her up? Nice.
I know. My fucking car took a shit.
She's a maniac now, so it's almost.
Car took a shit. Did you wipe his ass?
I need to wipe it, but
Did you wipe his ass?
my alternator died in the middle of Ridge Pike. It literally just died.
Today?
No, the other day.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I need to take it to the shop.
That's good. That's great.
Yep, it's great. I know.
But you had a few closings, so you might as well just buy a new car now.
It's all gone. What the fuck are you doing? It's gone. It's just
It's thin air. This is why you need this class.
bills. Yeah, that's
This is
why
why I need this.
It's exactly why.
He's
I
like,
need
when you
this
first
class.
get it, he's like, next thing you know, boom, it's gone.
Yep.
I'm gonna get a ticket. Should have paid that $20 freaking parking. Stupid. Got a lot of activity going on.
All right, great. Let's get going again. So I want to clarify one point.
My
that I
heart.
did,
Don't touch it.
that a couple people came up and had a conversation with me about. So back to where we were talking about expenses, 30%, cost of sale, 30%. You don't have to have it at 30%. If you've got less, like good for you. Think about the stage you are in your business. If you're a solo agent, if you have no agents on your team, your cost of sale is going to just be your cap and your royalty fee and maybe any referral fees you pay. You're not going to have any. You're not going to have a 30% cost of sale. You're not going to have it. You don't need it. What I would rather have you think about is the expense side. The expense side for most businesses is what gets out of whack. No matter the stage you're in, I want you to keep your expenses, in most cases, under 30% of your gross income. So if there was one number that you're trying to get your head around in terms of expenses, is have it under 30% of your gross income. Now here's the flip side. Most of you are way under 30% of your income. Most of you are actually way under investing in your business, and you're pulling all the money out of your business to live your lifestyle. Right? Is that fair? Yeah. The problem with that is you're starving your business of the oxygen it needs to grow. So if you are finding yourself, like every dollar you make, for as much as you can, you're sucking out into your personal account, you've got a problem because you're not investing enough in your business in order for it to grow. So think of yourself as like the local coffee shop, right? That local coffee shop has to buy coffee, it has to do advertising, it has to maintain its equipment, it has to hire staff. If the coffee shop owner didn't order any more coffee, right? So unfortunately in the service business, we don't often see the impact of us doing that. So 30% is max, but you may be underspending, so you may want to take a look at that. Questions? Yes?
Yeah, so this is my first year in business, so this might be just like a question, but like regarding taxes, I think I've always heard like 30% you take out to estimate, but then like 40%, do you find that it's closer to 40 or?
We're gonna have a whole thing on taxes, so hold that thought. Yes, sir.
Just the way I'm structured, like, if I'm on payroll, I give myself a salary, I know what it is, I do whatever, that I get every month. Looking at it against my operating account, do I count my own payroll as like an expense of the business and include that in expenses?
In most cases, yes.
Yes, right.
We're gonna get into more detail on that in this afternoon. Any other questions that I'm not gonna answer? Until later. Okay, all right, no, you guys are like, it's, all right, good. All right, let's keep going and dive into your financial team. So, you may be discovering already you probably can't do this alone. You need to surround yourself with some financial resources to get this set up. So go to page 24 of your book. Accounting software. We recommend you use some easy, widely available accounting software like Quicken or QuickBooks. I use QuickBooks. QuickBooks has a great interface. It downloads or it synchronizes with your bank accounts. It's really good. Now, you're still going to need some bookkeeping resources, but you can get a long way by using QuickBooks. So raise your hand if you're using QuickBooks right now to some degree. Okay, many of you are.
Or an equivalent.
Or an equivalent. Yeah. So I like that. Now, you are very likely also going to need a bookkeeper. It's a rare bird in real estate who is really good at keeping the books. And even if you are, I'd say that you're in greater danger because you should not be keeping all of your records because that's the time you're spending not developing business, which is what you actually need to do. So I highly recommend one of the very first things that you hire is a bookkeeper. And the bookkeeper is a resource that is going to help you organize all of this data. So raise your hand if you have a bookkeeper now. Couple of you, okay. So just raise them high again so people can see who has a bookkeeper in case those are resources you want to get referrals from your colleagues. Let me give you the bookkeeper I use. She's tremendous. Her name is Adanya Campbell, I-D-A-N-I-A. She has a small business set up and she services predominantly real estate agents. And so she has all this structures and all this stuff already set up. So I like that again. Adanya, I-D-A-N-I-A. Adanya Campbell. Adanya Campbell, I'll give you her contact information. I do not have any ownership in her business. This is just her business. Her cell phone number is, she's in Maryland, is 703-868-6534. 703-868-6534. And her email is Idania, I-D-A-N-I-A, at IC, as in Idania Campbell, bookkeepersolution.com. Idania at icbookkeepersolution.com. Your bookkeeper is going to help pay your bills, record all those payments, and probably even most importantly, organize all of the expenses and income in the right categories so that you're getting reports that are logically organized. That's called managing what's called the chart of accounts. We'll go into that. It reconciles all bank accounts and credit card statements and prepares monthly financial statements for you. So the bookkeeper has a really big role. Now, what I recommend you do is initially you get monthly reports. Ideally, you start to get weekly to every other week reports. Why? Lead indicators, tell me more.
See what's going on, not today, but right now, you make changes.
Beautiful. You can see what's going on now, right? It's like, the worst example of this is when I got a report from my CPA in April of 2002 that said that I had sort of screwed pooch all of 2001 and had not paid any taxes. And I was like, great, what am I going to do about that now? Whereas if you're getting weekly reports or every other week report from your bookkeeper, you can actually in the moment make decisions about what you spend or you don't spend. So let me give you a super tactical example of the execution of this. So in my sales team in July and August, we just kicked it with events. We spent a ton of money on events. And as I was looking at the P&Ls, I'm looking at the line item around lead generation. I'm like, wow, it's really ballooning. Like we're spending an enormous amount of money on lead generation. What's going on? I looked, I'm like, oh, we had big events in July and August. It was starting to exceed my budget for the year, so what did I do in September and October? Scale it back a little bit. Yeah. That's the beauty of having your reports, is you can, as a business owner, go, ooh, that's a little much. All right, well, let's do that a little different next month. Or next week, right? So also with weekly reports, there are times when I'll say, okay, cash flow's a little tight. Those 6 bills, I want you to push them to the following week. Right? Versus bringing my account down to nothing. So the weekly cadence, or every other week cadence with your bookkeeper, gives you the real-time information you need to manage your business in reality. All right? So, team person number 1 is your bookkeeper. Team person number 2 on page 25 is you're going to need a CPA and a tax advisor. Can prepare your annual federal, state, and local taxes and review and pay any payroll tax returns you might have, prepare your quarterlies, advise on tax planning. Here's what I'll say about that. In my experience, and you may have a different experience, it's just my experience. In my experience, most CPA and tax folks are really oriented to which one? Lead indicators or lag indicators? Lag, right? Most CPAs or tax people you go to, they're gonna look at everything you've done in the past and tell you kind of where you are now as it relates to that. What's the problem with that?
I'm sorry, could you explain the difference between lead and lag again?
Sure. So lag indicator is the end result, like getting the weight loss. The lead indicator is what goes into getting the weight loss or weight gain, calories and so forth. So, and a CPA or tax advisor, they're looking at the money you made and the expenses you spent and telling you what your tax liability is now. Lovely, but what's the problem with that as a business, in the real world? What's the problem with that? It's already happened. It's already happened.
It's too late to do anything about it.
It's too late to do anything about it. So the work as a business owner, the work as your work in your relationship with your CPA and tax advisor is to get them to do a forward look. It is not easy. It is not easy. Like getting them to predict what your taxes are likely to be based on this year's income, not last year's income, right? Because quarterlies are prepared based on last year's income. So think about this for a minute. Most people, if they're paying taxes at all, are paying taxes based on last year's income. What's the problem with that?
Hopefully you're more profitable this year, so you'll be underpaid.
If you're growing or you're not growing, then the calculation can be way off. And you don't know it until the following year. So you're constantly like a year and a half behind. Unless you engage with your CPA and tax advisor and you say, hey, on a quarterly or semi-annual basis, I want you to take a look at my current P&L, and I want you to project my tax liability for this year so that I know if I'm on track or I'm behind and how it relates to what the quarterlies say I should be paying based on last year's data. So I'll give you a good example. So what date just passed? Tax-wise.
Extension.
The big tax extension deadline, right? So CPAs are often pretty busy for those, about a month up to those big deadlines. I have a very good practice that I executed last week, which is I sent my tax advisor all of our updated P&Ls for the year. And I said, by the end of October, I want you to reconcile 2018's income and project my tax liability for 2018 so that I can make my tax payment, which is due when for fourth quarter? Anybody know? Bonus question,
December.
early in the day.
December 15th?
No?
Is it what it is?
No,
December.
it's actually due January 15th.
Oh, January.
So then, so January 15th, when I'm making my last tax payment for 2018, I can make the right tax payment for 2018. All right, so what do you do with that? Well, step one is you've got to have books to submit, right? So let's assume for a minute you're working with a bookkeeper, you've got your QuickBooks, you've got your chart of accounts set up like we're going to go over in a minute. Step two is you've got a CPA and tax advisor you're talking to at least twice a year who is reviewing those books for you and telling you where you stand currently as it relates to taxes. Do not do what I did, which is wait until March, April, May, extension, July of the next year to talk about what taxes you owed the previous year. See how that's like a nightmare? Right? So best practices twice a year. You gotta be engaging with your CPA. All right? Raise your hand if you feel like you've got a really great CPA that you'd be willing to refer to a colleague. Okay, so take a look around. If you do not have one, talk to one of your colleagues. And get a great CPA. Okay, so back to your team. So you've got a bookkeeper and a CPA, and they are different. It is generally not a great idea to have your CPA do your books. Why?
They're expensive.
Much more expensive. So if you're showing up with like a bunch of records at the end of the year to your CPA, you're like, I don't know, good luck, make some sense out of that, right? Fine, but you're paying an enormous amount more for that effort than you need to in absence of having.
Can we find out, like, can we put some numbers to that? What would be too much to pay?
Most bookkeepers, you're gonna pay between $40 and $60 an hour. 40 to 60 bucks an hour. A great CPA could be a couple $100 an hour.
Like a lawyer.
Or more, yeah. I mean, they're often somewhere around the lawyer fee. A senior CPA in a nice firm downtown Philly, I don't know, 300 bucks an hour? More? I don't know. I mean, these are well-paid folks. So think about it. You're paying somebody 200 bucks an hour to do your books if you're showing up at the end of the year with your data.
What I can just say is when I went from my regular personal CPA that I used before I was doing this business, I think I got maybe times 3 or times 4 when I went to like getting a business CPA, but also the tax savings was like also like way more than made up for it.
Yeah.
So it was totally worth it, and I'm definitely with what my guy is very focused on real estate specific. So if anybody needs somebody,
Great referral. Thank you. Okay, back to your team. You need a banker. How many people feel like they've got a good banker? This is tough anymore, right? Do you know what you feel like you've got a good banking resource?
Decent, as far as what?
Decent, yeah. As far as being able to actually call somebody and get a response.
Very good, yes, very good resource there.
So for me, that's kind of how I'm measuring it, is can I call someone I know who knows me and get something done?
We text back, that's a.
Text, great. So that's a great banker. As a business owner, you're a great client for a bank. I generally have better luck with smaller banks. Smaller, community-oriented banks, a little bit more one-to-one service. The flip side is sometimes they don't have as many products and other things that are nice as some of the big banks do. But having somebody you can rely on now is really important. It's important to establish that relationship, especially before you actually need them. Because what's the old saying, if you need a loan, you're not gonna get a loan, but if you don't need a loan, there'll be plenty of money out there for you. Right, so establishing a great relationship with a business banking person, the branch manager of the bank is an important component to bringing all this together. And then most banks too, by the way, allow you to get some sort of bookkeeper interface with your bank accounts, a certain level of security, so your bookkeeper can be in there reconciling and handling everything, and you don't have to be downloading the statements and all that sort of stuff. So that's again, part of building your overall financial team.
Can I ask a couple questions about bookkeepers again real quick?
Sure.
Do you have an average of what you think the number of hours a typical real estate agent will need their bookkeeper to work? And then do you think there's a threshold, like if you're brand new, at what volume you should think about having a bookkeeper versus doing it yourself?
I think you should hire a bookkeeper day one as a business owner. But as a business owner day one, they're gonna spend an hour a week on your books. I mean, it's not gonna be much, but they're gonna do them. Right, and it's not going to be you on Saturday night going, oh man, I didn't organize all this stuff. So, and that varies. Although, because of the technology interfaces with QuickBooks and the bank accounts, even pretty big, sophisticated businesses, we're talking only a few hours a week. We're not talking about a full-time hire. There's great technology leverage points. So if you're new, I'd say an hour a week, like 40 bucks a week, 50 bucks a week, should go a long way in giving you what you need from a bookkeeping standpoint. And then it'll scale up from there. Back to your team. You need an attorney, a great business attorney, right? Who's going to prepare your document. If you're the guy or gal who's like filing your LLC paperwork downtown, don't do that, please. Like, You gotta hire an attorney who prepares that stuff properly for you and is the go-to person for issues that you might have. So having an attorney, raise your hand if you feel like you've got a great business attorney you'd be willing to refer to someone in the room who doesn't have one. Fewer of you, okay, great. So note, for those of you who do not have an attorney relationship, you need one. And you need one before you need one. Right? Because when you need one, it's too late and you're like, I need one, right? So make a list of the resources I'm saying here that you don't have and secure them over the next few months. Like, get this team together for yourself. All right, let's go, an insurance agent. Right? You gotta have an insurance. So, the brokerage carries the Arizona emissions insurance for you, right? Yep. And, but even and above that, it's highly likely, and we recommend you have another general liability policy of some sort. So, Arizona emissions covers what it says, Arizona emissions with regards to real estate transactions. But let me tell you, there's a lot of stuff E&O does not cover. And if you don't have a general liability policy, which by the way are cheap, we're talking, a couple $100 a year for a few $1 million of coverage in most cases. That's an important part of your overall picture. Auto insurance, most people have that. Health and disability insurance, life insurance. Okay, let's talk about disability insurance. So, as 1099 independent contractors, if we're out of the game, we're out of the game. And so, ask yourself, how many months of income do you have that if something happened and you were physically, mentally, emotionally unable to do your job for 3, 6, 12, 24 months, how long can you go? Right? So lack of disability insurance is a real challenge, and so take a good look at that and see. If you don't have disability insurance, I highly recommend you get a policy. Get a policy for disability insurance. Life insurance, workers' compensation comes into play when you actually start to hire employees. So you can see why having a great insurance agent is an important component to building out your portfolio of financial advisors. Raise your hand if you've got a great insurance agent you could recommend, and if you need one, just take note of a hand nearby that you could, okay, great. Financial planner. All right, another element of your team, the financial planner. The financial planner is going to be somebody sometimes who will issue some of these policies, but is going to be the overall advisor to you on where your big world is financially. There's a lot of different models of financial planning out there. I'm not going to get into them today, though you should definitely take some good look at financial planning and do some interviews. I'll give you a recommendation. This is the one I use. His name is Stephen Rippersey. He's with Ameriprise Financial, and I've worked with him for years. He's good. So 302-468-8206, 302-468-8206, and his email is Stephen, S-T-E-P-H-E-N, .Rifici, R-I-F-I-C-I, it's the longest email ever, at AMPF, like as in Ameriprise Financial.com. Okay, and then, of course, having a business coach. So I've had a business coach, I don't know, since 2006, always and forever. And so that's another person for your team. So go to page 27. Now I want you to, as an activity, I want you to write down your resources. So write down who you have. Go ahead and put them there now, and just take note of who you don't have, so that you can, over time, compile those. Go ahead and take 10 seconds, write that down, and put your corresponding action plan associated with that. All right, how many people have all 7 in place? Okay, so everybody has a little homework. 6, 5, 4, 3. Okay, all right. 2. Oh man, we got some work to do. Anybody have any of them? 1. All right, cool. How about 0? Who's proud and tall at 0? There we go. Great. That's all right. It's your second day. You're like, I can stand. All right, good. But just ground yourself in the reality of your financial team. All right. Let's talk about banking structure for a little bit, and entity configuration. Banking structures and entity configuration. You ready? Okay. Did you do the game? Thank you. Appreciate the enthusiasm. All right, banking structure and entities. So here, in a basic form, here's what we're recommending. We're recommending that you open a business checking account if you don't already have one. Now that assumes what?
Business.
And you have a business.
You have an LLC.
And it assumes money.
You have an LLC.
It assumes you have a business, an LLC, which assumes you already met with an attorney, and you chose the form you need, and we'll go over forms in a minute, and you filed the paperwork to form an actual business. In there is the requirement to actually open a business checking account. Okay? So where does the money come from to open that business checking account? Clients. The startup money, where's that come from? You. Yeah, thank you. I don't know who said that. Yeah, probably you. Right, so you're going to make a capital contribution yourself to your newly formed startup business, deposit it into your business banking or business checking account, and voila, you now are in business. All right. We also recommend you have a business savings account. A business savings account. How many months of expenses should you have in your business savings account?
I like six. I was just gonna say 6 to 8 months. Okay.
How say it?
6 to 8 months.
6 to 8. 4 to 6. Great. I think it's up to you. It's up to you and your tolerance level for risk. 0 would not be great. 0 months, I don't recommend. 1 month, tough. I like to look at a 90-day cycle. Because I feel like even if there's a pretty big situation, I'm very likely to recover from it in 90 days. Now, the bigger your business gets, the more money you may want to have aside, because it starts to get scarier. But initially, 90 days is good. And quite frankly, it's hard to get that in the savings account. So if I were you, I would start by just taking maybe 10% a month and putting it over in the savings account. This is not, by the way, your tax account. This is your savings account so that when your cash flow goes like this, it's not like January 15th and you're panicking. You've accommodated for the fact that it was once July and now it's January, and that's cool. We'll transfer over. Easy, all right? So to start, open the business savings account, and best practice that I've found, take 10% a month and move it over to the savings account. Over time, that can be great. A business credit card. Business credit card. I personally love American Express for 2 reasons. One is you have to pay it off every month, and you get points. So I like that. But more importantly, you have to pay it off, right? So gathering business debt, not great. So now, I do not recommend a business debit card account. Why? Any idea? Say again? Makes it easy. Full funds, yeah, for sure.
You need to build credit history too.
Credit history for debit card? Probably not.
No, I meant with the, you need the credit card.
Right? Yeah, you may with a credit card. Yeah. Sir?
Is it that when you're doing it off of a debit, the expenses are rolling out like at different times of the month, but when you do it on credit, like you know your monthly?
That's good. I like that. It might give you a little more control of cash flow. But here's the biggest thing. So this was probably, I don't know, this is probably 10 years ago. And I had some fraud on my business checking account. So 20 grand had come out of the business checking account. It was transferred to some country far, far away. And so I called the bank, and I was like, clearly, this is an issue of fraud. And they're like, oh, yes, it appears so, and we'll do an investigation. Like, okay, so do I get a credit back for that money? And to my shock and surprise, I learned no, in that case. And the consumer protection rules, they give you protection legally in your personal checking account, don't apply to the business checking account. Now some banks will still do it, it's a bank-to-bank policy, but there's no requirement that in the event of fraud, that they give you your money back. No requirement. So, 20 grand, gone. So I closed that business debit card back. So, business credit cards most always have policies that give you that money back, but the business debit card sucks it right out of your checking account, and you may or may not get it back. So, personal decision on my part after that experience was no business debit card.
You don't even have it in case you need to make a withdrawal, you just have it completely canceled?
I don't even have it. Now, they issue it automatically when you open the account in most cases, so I've had to say, I do not want a business debit card. The other thing is, you know, I mean, it doesn't have to be a big fraud off to some country. And fraud is happening all the time on these cards, right? We've probably all had some degree of that. But because there's no requirement legally that they give you your money back in those business accounts, it's just one additional layer of protection that I found to be useful. So, business credit card, tax savings account. Notice that is a separate account. We're recommending that you actually have an account that is your tax savings account. All right? And you can see the value of this now, right? So you get a check that comes into your business checking account from the brokerage. Before you pay any of your bills, you get money that goes, transfers into the tax savings account and transfers into your business checking account. Right? So configuring your accounts this way gives you the practical option of making transfers before you pay your bills. And if you've got a great bookkeeper, you can instruct your bookkeeper to do that. And it starts to force the big issues front and center. And then, of course, personal checking account, personal savings account, credit card investments. Any questions on bank account configuration? Okay, all right, great. I thought for sure we had a lot of questions.
I was just curious if like you have, you know, multiple accounts at one bank, multiple banks, like doing research on, you know, which one's the best for saving, for tax savings, business savings. Do you recommend doing it all under one roof? Or shop around, see what's best?
Personally, I like to keep the active business accounts all in one bank because you're going to be able to leverage the relationship as you grow versus having a little bit in all bunch of banks. You have no leverage at all.
Yeah, okay.
So does that answer your question? Okay. All right, let's look at business entity configuration. Oh, sir, did you have a question on that?
Yes. So I have a business partner.
Okay.
We have a account, right? Should each of us then have the same hierarchy, being that, you know, technically our two businesses?
Are you two businesses or one business?
Well, it is under one brand, right? So we have our production individually, so we treat it as such.
Do you have one, are you jointly owned in one entity or are you just branded together?
Jointly.
If you jointly own one entity, then the entity itself should have this configuration of its own business savings. And tax account is a little different because tax is probably based on your configuration of your role to be personal. So you would have a business savings account and then your tax account you would manage personally.
Can I comment on that?
Yep.
So unless you own, unless your ownership in that main entity is owned by your own personal entity, is it owned by your personal entity or is it owned by you personally?
Personally.
Okay, so
But I'm considering an entity.
if your ownership in the combined entity was owned by your own personal entity, theoretically you could set up your own chart, but it would be, you wouldn't need it at that point because you wouldn't have all the same expenses.
Yeah. So, and that's a good segue into business entity. So, let's start at the top, sole proprietorship. In absence of anything else, everybody in this room is in a sole proprietorship. And a sole proprietorship basically means you don't have an entity, right? Just you. And so everything's on your tax return and you know, there you go. A lot of businesses are sole proprietorships. You know, when you set up an LLC, I don't know that there's a perfect answer to that, but my general thought as I get into businesses is I think, well, if this thing is going to have the potential in the near term to generate between $60,000 and $100,000 or more in gross revenue, it's very likely I'm going to go into some sort of entity.
Yep.
If this is under $50,000, $60,000 a year, it kind of sort of falls a little bit into hobby land. You may or may not need an entity for a hobby, right? So you have to look, like, am I in the business to be in business, or am I in the business to sell a few houses as a hobby? That's gonna make a determination a little bit of if you go beyond sole proprietor. So the next step is partnership and/or LLC. So an LLC is a wonderful configuration. Way back when, I'm not sure exactly the year, but Congress changed the tax laws that gave LLCs similar benefits, not all the same, but some similar benefits to corporations. And so in small businesses, almost everybody ends up opening some form of an LLC. Now, you may form some sort of partnership if you have a partner. And there are different kinds of LLCs that you can also form, right? If you go to page 30 and 31, there's what's called an S Corp and also a C Corp. Now here's what I would say about S Corp versus C Corp LLCs. You need to talk to your attorney and talk to your accountant, because there's both legal implications to your entity structure, and there are